So this session is going to be a live session for the annotations part of the workshop. So what I'm planning to do is I'll share my screen now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Git book and I'll do the exercises, and then so hopefully you'll watch me doing them. You're welcome to try and follow along, but I think it's probably going to be easier if you just watch me doing it, and then after this session you go in and try it yourselves, and then give me a shout if there are any problems. I'll try and cover, there's a couple of questions on the Slack channel, and I'll try and cover them as we get through to them. But if you do have any questions, feel free to shout out or to ask in the chat. And again, if you notice any network issues, let me know and I can pause and try and sort them out. So first of all, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So let's start. So far we've covered the image API and the presentation API. And this is kind of building on top of the presentation API by adding annotations. Annotations can be many different things and they have many different uses. They can be for things like transcribing documents, commenting or analyzing content. So picking out maybe handwritten annotations in the marginalia or different types of things like that. It can also be used for highlighting areas like handwritten annotations. And it also can be used for teaching or explaining content. So I mentioned stories there, and there's a guest video on the stories editor, and that uses annotations to take you around an image and explains different parts of it. And when we're talking about annotations, the way that IIIF does it is it uses the W3c Annotation Model, and there's an image here of how that model works. So you've got an annotation and it has two parts, a body and a target. The target is the thing that you're pointing to. So most of the time it's a page or a part of a page. And then the body is the thing that you're annotating. So this could be a video, this could be an image, but most of the time it's text, and it could be like a transcription of the word, or it could be a comment about the word, but that's the body. With IIIF version 2, which we've kind of focused on during this workshop, it uses something called open annotations, which was the thing that was published before web annotations. It's very similar, but there are a couple of differences, and I'll go to those. So this is an example of what the Json of an annotation looks like, and it kind of matches a model. So this part of it, the whole is the annotation. And the annotation has an ID, has a type annotation, it has a motivation, which is painting, which I'll go into in a minute. And then it has a resource and an on. So the resource is the body and the on is the target. And this on just points to a canvas ID. It doesn't say it's part of a canvas, it points to the whole canvas. And then the resource is the body of the annotation. And in this example, we're saying, we've seen this yesterday when we were looking at the presentation API. This is an image that is being painted onto the canvas, and this is done as an annotation. And just here, so body is resource and target is on. One thing special to mention is this motivation. So IIIF has created this SC painting, which means that this annotation is a painting annotation. So it's for painting onto the canvas. So you paint images, you can paint text, but there are other motivations like transcription or other types, or commenting. It's kind of explaining what the annotation is there for. This is a transcribing annotation. So again, we've got the ID, we've got the type annotation. This time the motivation is commenting. The target is this canvas and this rectangle on the canvas. And this is the body, which is just saying it's text. So Zeus seated on a stool throne. And you can see I've highlighted here the canvas. And this annotation is actually this box around here. So this whole image is a canvas, and the box is around this particular part of the coin with the text that it's Zeus sitting on the steel throne. And then the slight caveat between open annotations and web annotations. So the resource and on are the open annotations, which is part of IIIF version 2. This is what an annotation looks like in the web annotations, which is IIIF version 3. And there are a few changes. At ID is now ID, at type is now type. The body is body rather than resource, and instead of on, it's now target. So it matches much more to the annotation model, and it's much easier to understand. But unfortunately, all of the examples I'm going to use are for the open annotations, so resource and on. So as well as annotations, there is also the concept of an annotation list. And this is just a list of annotations. So it has an ID here, and this is one of those IDs that you should be able to put into your web browser, and it should resolve to the JSON. It's one of these resolvable ones. And then it has a type just to say it's an annotation list. And then in resources, you just have these annotations that we've seen earlier. So you might have an annotation list for a page. They tend to be page level annotation lists. Okay, so for the first exercise, this is a guide really just about using Mirador. So we're going to go to the public version of Mirador, and we're using Mirador 2 here. There is a version of Mirador 3 if you go here, but for this purposes, we're going to use Mirador 2. And this quick intro is what I'm going to show. So when you open up Mirador, you get these two screens. And if I close one of them, now we've got the one image. And you can go to the 4 squares on the left-hand side and click Replace Object. And this gives you a list of all of the manifests that have kind of been preloaded in this version of Mirador. And you can see there's lots of different ones from Harvard, Stanford, UCD in Dublin, Yale Centre for British Art, the National Gallery, the Bodleian Libraries. There's lots of different manifests from different places. And then if we just click one of the manifests, we can see this one's got a table of contents. But if we wanted to start annotating it, we click the toggle annotations at the top left. So I'm just going to do this here, and I'm going to draw a box over this bit here. And I'm just going to type in what I can see. And then I click Save. So that's how you create an annotation in Mirador. There was a question about whether you can put in videos. So I think you insert edit media, and in theory, you should be able to paste your embed code here. So I haven't tested this. So this is, if we go to YouTube. If we go for IIIF. This is me looking a lot younger. And if we can go into the embed and share, click embed, and it's given us this embed code. And in theory, you should be able to paste this in here and click OK. And then I should be able to click Save. And it's not there. Okay. After all that. So it doesn't look like it is working to embed YouTube videos, which is a shame. But if you can, it does show it in there, but it doesn't show it in the annotation. But if you had maybe the source link to the video, you might be able to put it in there. You can also insert an image, a link to an image. You can also do another one. So you can do some HTML, so bold, italics. And you can also add a tag. So this might be a title. And click Save. So this is the kind of basic functionality of Mirador, and that allows you to do these annotations. And this should take you through this. There are different ways of creating, so I just created rectangular annotations, but you can draw circles, you can draw free draw, you can do lined annotations, you can do point annotations, and then you can customize the size of the square or the lines in the annotation. So you're welcome to have a play around just to get a feel for how the annotations work in Mirador. But some of the questions is where are these annotations stored? For this particular version of Mirador, the Project Mirador version, it uses something called a browser local storage. So it's saved within my browser on my machine. So if you were to go to that Project Mirador and navigate to that page, you wouldn't be able to see those annotations because they're just within my browser. And if I cleared my history, then my annotations would disappear. So it's perfect for a demo. Everybody can start annotating away and nobody's going to see other people's annotations, but it's no good for a kind of a production site. So how do we make these annotations more permanent? And the way we do that is with an annotation store, which we'll go on to next. So annotation stores are exactly what they say, really. They store annotations. And as with many things with IIIF, there are quite a few different options available. So if you follow this link to the awesome IIIF, there are a number there, including Annotot, which was developed by Jack Reed, one of the Mirador developers. Elucidate, which is developed by Digerati, and they're the company behind the Universal Viewer and many other developments. Then the Simple Annotation Server, which is one that I wrote and this guide is based on. It can store the annotations in a triple store, so a linked data store, or Elasticsearch or Solr. And it was developed while I worked at the National Library of Wales. For this exercise, we're going to look at one of the crowdsourcing projects at the National Library of Wales that was based on Mirador. And you can click on that to see the final end product, the kind of live version of the material. In the previous version of this workshop, somebody was asking about digital object identifiers and where you put digital object identifiers in IIIF. So if you are interested, there's a little section there. And then transcribing the Book of Remembrance. So this is the example from the National Library of Wales. And this was set up, must have been about 4 or 5 years ago now, using Mirador and customizing Mirador so that it could capture the different types of data in this book. And this book is, I'll show you it here. So it's over 1,000 pages long, and it's the list of everybody of Welsh birth and parentage who passed away in the First World War, and also other nationalities that fought in Welsh regiments. And you can see, for example, go to here. So this is a list of the Royal Navy ships, and then you've got their rank, their name, the kind of branch of the service, the ship they served on, and the kind of location of where they were known from, where they were born. And you can see that this table of contents, I think I might have shown it in some of the introductory sessions about the complex table of contents. And this is a real hierarchical table of contents. But the task we set the volunteers was to start annotating. So if I go to the Welsh Guards, no, maybe I'll go right to the beginning. So if I create a box around this one, so, and I just type what I see. And then once you've typed the data, you want to type it. So you highlight the text and click, that's the rank. This is the name. This is the unit. And this is the ship. And this is the place. And then click save. And you can see it's saved that annotation. But as well as the text of the annotation, it's also split out the different fields. So we can actually turn this data into a database of people, and we can assign them ranks, names, places, and also locate them in the branch of the military. So what we did is we got the volunteers to transcribe this book, and they've completed it, must have completed it a couple of years ago. It was part of the centenary Remembrance celebrations at the end of World War I. And the project that was looking at transcribing this was doing it as an act of remembrance. So it wasn't public crowdsourcing, it was kind of small community groups that were crowdsourcing it. And so they'd go to a place, they'd be able to start transcribing this book in small communities. And it was kind of like an act of remembrance in the transcription as you're kind of typing these, and the names are really becoming live, and you can kind of picture some of the stories behind a lot of the entries in this book. And there were a few problems with using Mirador. It was not the easiest way to transcribe a book. But as I say, it's over 1,000 pages, and they managed to complete it within a year. And so it worked quite well, and the data is now available. And you're welcome to have a go on this example. If you click that link, you can start transcribing. One of the things that Miro doesn't do is it doesn't work well with multiple people transcribing the same page at the same time. So try and pick not one of the first few pages, try and pick a random section to start transcribing, just in case you're conflicting with somebody else who's picked the same page. There's just some instructions about how to do the transcription. So some of the exercises is to navigate to somebody else's section. So actually, as I was transcribing, this one popped up. And I don't know if that was one I did earlier or if somebody else did it. But if I navigate to another page and somebody's done a transcription, it will pop up. And if you go to this URL and you go to this page, you'll see the annotations that I've done have saved. So this is one of the kind of the benefits of the Annotation Store over the local browser storage, is that it can be seen by other people, it is persistent, and it can be shared. But if we take this manifest to another site, say the Project Mirador, so if I copy this manifest and I go to the Project Mirador version of Mirador and I paste it in here, and I go to the page that I transcribed, you can see that the annotation isn't there. So the annotation works in this version of Mirador, but hasn't worked in this version of Mirador. And the reason for that is that we haven't linked the annotation list to the manifest. So the annotations are only existing in this version of Mirador that's connected to this annotation store. And if we take it to the universal viewer, I think we'll see the same thing. So the universal viewer doesn't show annotations, but what it does do is it's got this search bar, and that manifest is configured to point to the Annotation Server's IIIF search endpoint. So if I search for the thing I transcribed, which was Royce, if it works, I click search. And it should ideally take me to that annotation. We'll leave that running for there and then maybe come back to it. So if we look kind of behind the scenes at what this annotation looks like. So it's similar to the ones I introduced a moment ago. It's got motivation commenting. The annotation part's got the ID, and this ID should resolve to the annotation. It's got an extra thing, which is the created date, and it usually has a modification date, so the date the annotation was created and when it was modified. The on is slightly, looks different, but is actually a very similar thing. So the canvas is this. This is the canvas, the page that we're annotating. And then this is the box of the annotation, so the box that I drew. And then this is the body of the annotation. And what we've got here is something called RDFA, which is a way to put linked data within HTML. So it appears like HTML to Mirador, but actually in the background, it's also linked data. And if we look more closely, this is what it looks like. So we have the rank, the name, the unit, and the ship in this example. And you can take all of these transcriptions, especially now that they've been completed, and you can put them into a linked data store. And I've done some looking at this data, and particularly looked at the place mentioned in the data, and resolved it with Google Maps to kind of get coordinates for these places. And you can see for all of the transcriptions in the book, if you plot them onto a map, this is the data that you get back. With the kind of lighter colors, more people, and the kind of redder colors, less people. And it is the Welsh Book of Remembrance, so it is about Wales. And you can see that the population centres, which is mostly in South Wales and Cardiff and Swansea, are replicated in the book. And then again, the population centres in Wales tends to be around the coast. And you can see the red marks around the coast are quite true and follow the kind of current population centres. And then there's other population centres like London and Manchester, where other people were mentioned in the Book of Remembrance. I also had a look at the ships that were mentioned and tried to resolve them to Wikipedia, just to see what happened to them and if there was a kind of a single event where a lot of the ships were lost. And you can see that the majority of names mentioned served on ships that were sunk in the Battle of Jutland, which was one of the major kind of encounters during World War I for the Navy, and it affected a lot of ships. But it was this one that really struck out, this Kningon, which I couldn't find on Wikipedia, and it was also a merchant ship rather than a Navy ship. And looking into what happened to it, I found some research on some family history sites about the names of the people that served on that ship, and so they're the names of the 10 people who were there when the ship sank. And then looking to the National Library of Wales newspaper collection and also some other family history sites, you can see that there was a merchant ship that was off the coast of, I think it was around Scotland, and unfortunately it hit a mine in the sea and was sunk, and all the hands were lost. And this just kind of hints about all the different stories which are kind of really hidden in this data. Although it's a transcription project, it's really is full of stories. And by turning all of the names into data, it's possible to link it to other data sources and really try and pull out the stories that are hidden in the content. And if you're interested in looking at this, there is all the data is available as annotations at this GitHub site. So when we look at the universal viewer, I showed you the search. Let's see if it's worked now. No, it hasn't. Oh, shame. So what should happen, and maybe if I go to the live one. So this is the live one, which contains all of the different annotations. And if I search for Jones, which is a really common Welsh surname, you will hopefully see the results. There. So you can see, as I say, it's really common. So each one of these bubbles represents an instance of Jones it's found. And if I click it, it then takes me to the page and also highlights the different Joneses in this page. And you can navigate it through. So this makes a really good output of kind of a transcription or a crowdsourcing project. A lot of times when you do these projects, it's not clear what you can do with the data. So using a IIIF Search API gives a kind of a really good use case for collecting these annotations. And then the second use case, which was providing a link to the annotations like this one, where they're available on GitHub, allows people to work with them and explore them and really interrogate the data. So you've got those two use cases, the kind of research use cases, and then also just making the material much easier to navigate by implementing the IIIF Search API. So we can ask, how did that work? So if we have a look into the JSON, we can see it's got this service here. And this service is what you need for the Search API. So the profile is kind of telling, there are lots of different types of services, and we saw an image service as well, but the profile says this is a IIIF Search service. The ID is the ID that we're going to use to work with the Search API. And then the context is just so that you can turn this JSON into linked data and back again. So this is what the ID looks like. And this is something particular to the simple annotation server that generates this ID for the search. And then to be able to search something, you add q equals and then the search term. So if I want to search for Cardiff, this is what I search for. And I hope this isn't going to be an internal server error. No, good. So you can see that this is returned as search results. And this format of JSON is defined in the IIIF Search API. But it's very much an annotation list. So in resources, you can see that this is the annotations that I showed you earlier. So it's got an ID, and this is the ID of the annotation. It has a motivation, and it's commenting. It has a resource, which is the body of the annotation, which says William Davis, Cardiff. And it has an on, which tells you which canvas and whereabouts to draw the box for that search result. And you can see there are a number of hits for Cardiff. And if you have a look in the Search API, there are a number of different parameters. There aren't a lot of parameters. I'll find them here. Here we are. So the query parameter, motivation, so you can search for commenting, transcription, or painting annotations. The date, this is the creator date of the annotation if it falls in a particular range, and then a user, so the user that created the annotation. The simple annotation server only supports the Q parameter, and that's the one that's, I think it's the only one that's supported in the viewers as well. And although the IIIF Search API, it's not meant to be kind of a full Boolean powerful search. It's meant to do like a function like a PDF search within. So if you think of a PDF document and you're able to search the text within a PDF document, that's what we're trying to hit with the IIIF Search API. Okay, so we're going to try now and start annotating your own manifests. So I have got a manifest which I created yesterday. Which is this one, and it's called manifest2.json, and it should be the same name as you used in the presentation API session yesterday. So I'm going to go to, if you don't have a manifest, you can use that one, but it would be good to use your manifest if you can. So I'm going to go to the sas.gdmrdigital.com. I'm going to copy my manifest. I'm going to click add item, and then I'm going to paste my manifest here. I'm going to click load. And Emily, I mentioned a Mirador version, which was an HTTP version. This is an HTTP version. So if you want to test your own manifest in this, hopefully it'll work okay.
Okay, thanks.
Great. So this is my manifest. And if I click on it, I can see there's a single image. And this image is coming from the Internet Archive. And then I'm going to start annotating up. You can see I've already done some annotations, but if I do a new one, if I do one here, and call it a tree. So I've got 3 annotations on this image. What do I do next? So what we're going to try and do is, now that I've got these annotations connected to in this version of Mirador, I want to be able to download the annotations and link it to my manifest so that I can use it in a different version of Mirador, and so that those annotations stay around with the manifest. You might want to do this if, say, for example, you're transcribing content using an annotation store like this, but you've finished your transcription, now you want to publish it and make it read-only. So what you do is you'd annotate here, and then you'd follow these instructions to download the annotations and then link it to the manifest so they're always tied together. So I've finished doing my annotations. Next thing I need to do is to go to this page. And this page here, you'll see all of the different manifests that everybody that has used this annotation store has transcribed. So I've got to try and pick out my manifest from this list. And the way to do that is to look at the @ID. And so I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to search for it. And I can see it's this one here. This is a list of canvas IDs. So I've only got one canvas, one page. So I only see one annotation, one link for this. If you have two canvases and you've annotated them both, you'll see 2 links. And if I click this, I'll be taken to an annotation list. And this is what I want to link to my manifest. So following the instructions, I've gone there, I've found my manifest. And I've searched it, yeah. And I've done this bit and I've got the list of canvases. And then, sorry, I wanted to go save as. So if I go back and go save link as, and I want to store it in my IIIF workshop directory, and I'm going to call it annotations1.json, and I'm going to replace that one. Okay, and if I just double check that that works. There we are. So I have my annotation list. It's always useful to check that it works in this, because it tells you if the JSON's valid. It's really easy to put the odd wrong comma in there, the wrong brace, but that looks okay. So I've done the save link as. Now I want to link the annotations to a manifest. So I want to find the canvas in my manifest, and I want to add this other content section into it. So if I go to Atom, I've got my manifest. And this is the canvas that I've annotated. And I want to add this other content in. And it says to do it after the images array. So this is one that you have to be really careful that you get it in the right place, especially with the commas. So you can see that this images on line 32 ends on line 54, and there's a comma at the end. So I want to go like this, and I want to copy in this other content. And then it's always best to make sure that the indentation is correct, because it tells you if you've missed anything. And then I'm going to put a comma here. So you put a comma on the last of everything. So there's no comma here because it's the last thing, but everything before has a comma at the end. So I've added within the canvas at the same level as the images, I've added other content which points to this annotation list. And I'm going to save that. And then I'll go back to here and I'll refresh just to double check that my JSON is correct. And you can see it is. So save the manifest. Again, watch out for JSON typing errors. Common JSON issues include make sure that the brackets match up. Lines that are not the last line in a list array must have a comma at the end of the line. And to make this easy, you may want to use a JSON aware editor like Atom, which will tell you if you're missing anything. But you can also copy and paste into JSON lint. So if I was here and it told me that my JSON wasn't quite correct, I'd go to my manifest, I'd copy it, and I would paste it into my JSON lint and click validate. And what you want to see is this valid JSON. If this is red, it'll tell you the line number. So for example, I was to have missed this comma and I validate the JSON, it takes me to the line and says there's something missing here. So I just add my comma, validate it again, and it looks okay. But it's really easy to do, so do check. Right, so now I'm going to go to a different version of Mirador. This also is an HTTP one, so I know it will work with my manifest. I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to take my manifest. I'm going to go to this version of Mirador. I'm going to paste it in. And when I open it, I'm hoping when I click this button, I'll see my annotations, and there you are. So I've now got 3 annotations. And this particular version of Mirador, which is on IIIF.gdmr digital rather than SAS.gdmr digital, isn't connected to a annotation store. It's got that local browser storage, so I can kind of annotate away, but it won't be stored anywhere apart from in my browser. But the proof that this worked was the annotations, like the tree that I made, is now along with the manifest. And if this manifest was an HTTPS manifest, I could take it to any version of Mirador and these annotations would show up. So I'm going to pause there for questions. I'm going to go into the IIIF Search API next. So I'll see if I also get an internal server error. Were there any questions that I didn't cover from Slack or any questions so far?
Is it possible to include annotations directly in the manifest instead of using a separate annotation store?
Yes, so this is what we've done here. In this example, we've downloaded the annotations, and this is actually a file. So if we look here, this is the annotations that are being linked to from the manifest. So it's no longer in an annotation store. It's just a flat, straight file.
But it still needs to be a separate external file.
It still needs to be a separate external file. With IIIF version 3, you can embed annotations into the manifest, but in version 2, it has to be external.
Thanks.
G, did you have a problem with step 5? We've passed that step, that your JSON is valid through JSON lint.
Yes, I have 3 canvases, and I have the first one was that dog, and I try to add 1 annotation and follow the step, but when I try to display, it won't show up. Okay.
Maybe if you can stay at the end, we can have a look at your manifest and try and find out what's going on.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
You've checked the JSON, which would have been my first thought, but then we can have a look and see where it is. Hopefully, it's going to be something small.
Okay.
Okay, so the next stage is the IIIF Search API. So downloading annotations is great, but it means people can view your annotations. But say if you've annotated an awful lot, you really want a way to be able to search it. And so we're going to do it using the IIIF Search API. So the step 1 is to index your manifest. So the simple annotation server, although you've transcribed your manifest, the simple annotation server at this point doesn't know how many pages are. So it's only seen the pages that you've annotated. So in my example, I've only got one canvas and I've annotated it, so it actually knows all of them, but it doesn't know if there was 10 other pages that haven't been annotated. So to register your manifest with the annotation server, you've got to use this upload manifest. And I should say that this Search API functionality with an annotation store isn't usual. It's something that I've added to Simple Annotation Server. I don't believe the other annotation servers support the IIIF Search API. So the other annotation servers, you can download the annotations and link the annotations, but you can't do this IIIF search step. It's something particular to Simple Annotation Server. So I'm going to upload my manifest. I'm going to index it. My manifest is here. So this is the upload manifest. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to index it, and then great, it's indexed. So it's only one canvas, so it was really, really quick. And what this does is it gives me the Annotation Service URL. So this is the IIIF Search URL that I want to use in my manifest. So index your manifest. We've identified the IIIF Search endpoint. And now we need to add it to our manifest. So I've still got my manifest open in Atom. I want to add this service. So I'm going to copy this over into here. I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to sort out the formatting. So each line has a comma apart from the last one. There's a comma there, and then these two braces match up. So that looks okay. I'm going to have to change the search ID to the ID that came out of the Simple Annotation server, and that is this one here. So I'm going to copy this one and go to here and paste it in. Then I'll save it, and then I'll go back to here, just double check it's valid JSON. It's fine. I'll just show you if I'd forgotten to put this comma here in. When I looked at here, I get this, which isn't useful. It kind of tells you there's an error. It tells you at line 18, but it doesn't really give you much information. So that's why I tend to use JSON lint. It kind of gives you a better reason for the error. So I'll put that in there, and I'll refresh, and it's working. So the JSON's okay. So I've replaced the search ID, and now I'm going to test it with a IIIF viewer. So I'm going to start with the universal viewer. I need to copy my URL to my manifest. And fingers crossed, if I type tree, yes. So it has found my search result. So what it's done, just to go back, is that for my manifest, it's now linked to this service, and it says if you want to do search queries, then use this URL, and that's a IIIF search endpoint. So you can add a queue parameter, search for tree, and it'll return annotations. And the way that Simple Annotation Server does this is it also, if I click to annotate, it does a live search. So is this going to work? No. So if I get my manifest, and if I go back to here, add item, and if I add another annotation, and click save, and then if I go back to the universal viewer, I should be able to search for people, and it should show it. It has great. So it's kind of a live search service. So as you're annotating, the search service is being updated. So you only need to index a manifest once, and then you have a search endpoint. and you can put that into the manifest, and you can carry on transcribing your content. And the more you transcribe, the more that will appear in search results, and it's kind of a live service. There is also search in Mirador. So if I click search, if I type in flower, I think was one, and click submit. Maybe it wasn't flower, let's try tree again. So it's found the tree annotation. There's also the search service in Mirador 3, which does work with this, but again, because our manifest is HTTP, it won't work with the demo version of Mirador 3 because that's HTTPS. So the questions, we've done universal viewer, we've pasted in the manifest, it does show a search box. It has found the annotation, but note the search is case sensitive. If you add an annotation Mirador, it does show up in the search results in the UK, in the UV, so that does work. So that's the end of the exercises for this session. There is an optional one, which is installing.
Can I ask a quick question about search before we move on from that?
Sure.
If you have a collection of annotated manifests, can you search an entire collection?
In theory, yes. So you can add this the same way as you add your search service to the collection. You can do that. But I don't know if the Universal Viewer supports it or Mirador supports it.
Okay, thank you.
So it's another one of those, there's quite a few questions people have asked where it's supported in the spec, but not yet in the viewers. With the Universal Viewer particularly, they have kind of like a funding model where it's open source and free to use. But if you want changes, you have to kind of pay for them. So a lot of the functionality that's in the Universal Viewer, different institutions have paid to get it implemented. So for example, if search within collection was really important to you, you could contact Digerati or Ed Silverton, who was one of the original developers, and you can pay to get those features implemented. So we kind of all benefit from all using it. Mirador is much more developed by institutions. So if you have developers at your institutions, they kind of welcome pull requests. So if you want extra functionality in Mirador, you almost have to kind of contribute it yourself rather than pay a company for it.
Thanks.
So the last one, this is an optional one, is to install the simple annotation server on your own machine. So you're welcome to do this if you want to. The benefits are that all the annotations are private. So the annotations on the hosted version, anybody can see. It's not kind of private to your user, they are public. So this is what you could do if you wanted to annotate your own manifest, or if you wanted to keep your annotations locally, or potentially if you want to install it for your institution, you can have a look at what's involved by installing it locally. And then I'm not going to cover it here, but there are some more advanced use cases for annotations, and there's a Google slide presentation there if you want to go through it. But maybe I'll go through a couple. There's this fantastic service from Clocan for georeferencing maps. And I'll use the version from Stanford. No, I won't. I'll use the version from Clocan. So it is free to try. You can paste in your, if you've got a IIIF image of a map, you can paste in the IIIF image for that map into here, or the manifest with that map image. And then you get the interface, which is example in Stanford. Don't know whether I can find one. But this is what you get. You get the modern map on one side and historical map on the other side. And you drop points on the old map and the new map. And so it kind of distorts the old map so it fits the modern map. Unfortunately, in the Cloak and Demo version, you can't download that data. But if you could, you'd be able to make that kind of indexable so that you can find the map by georeference, and also you can kind of overlay it onto a modern map. So you can see this one. This historical map's been warped and it can be overlaid over a modern map. And then you can zoom into both to kind of find the area of interest. So that's a really powerful tool. This is a great system, Recogito. This is free to use if you register. Oh, no, I don't want to register. I want to log in. So I've linked one of my IIIF images to this system, and it allows you to transcribe, remember rectangle, a bit like Mirador, but the difference is I can type in here, and then you can type things. So I can say that this is a place. I can say that this is a person, and I can say that this is an event. So it's a really powerful transcribing system, free to use, and you can do lots of things with this. A really good system. From the page, which I mentioned, there is a video on the extra videos up in the overview, guest presentations. There is a demo of From the Page here. They have a demo account, and so you're welcome to follow that and to try it out and start transcribing some of your own manifests. Unfortunately, it won't work with the ones you're using with the Chrome web server, because that's HTTP and From the Page is HTTPS, and that's actually the same for From the Page as well. But if you can find a manifest that an institution's published, you'll be able to transcribe that with From the Page. There's a great project, the Indigenous Digital Archive, and this is used, it used the same crowdsourcing system as National Library Wales based on Omeka S, but they also did a lot of machine transcription and machine learning of these records. It's a archive of the Native American records for children that were sent to boarding schools. So it's a really quite powerful collection, and they've kind of machine translated it to try and gather together this wealth of data. So it picks out things like tribes, it picks out schools. I think the themes and collections are kind of user driven, but it's also got a lot about respectful online access, and they've got interesting ways of trying to interpret the data and kind of put the data in context. But it's a really interesting project. And then also there's quite a few different transcription and crowdsourcing platforms that work with IIIF. Another one is LibCrowds from the British Library. And all of them work with, you kind of bring in a manifest, you kind of configure what you want to capture, and then you output annotations. And then the annotations can be shared for people to process using linked data, or it can be kind of an endpoint for the IIIF Search API. So it's really kind of a powerful different tools that you can use with crowdsourcing. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions?